Well, good day, everybody. This is Chris. I hope you're having fun doing whatever you're doing. Well, here I am. I just summited the top of the Grindstone Trail at Grindstone Lake in the Lincoln National Forest, New Mexico, just outside of Ruidoso. It's a beautiful day. It's about 80 degrees up here. The lake is way down there. And I'd like to just do a quick initial impression on something that I've been saving up for several months. Ever since, really since the beginning of the year, I've been saving up little by little and selling a thing here, a thing there, and finally got enough money to go ahead and do it. So normally what I've been doing when I go up and bike is I've been biking on an older bike, a 2006 Trek Remedy, and the Remedy was a bike that had dual suspension. It was kind of a trail, all mountain / enduro kind of bike, so it had 150 millimeters of suspension in the front and the back, and 26-inch wheels. 26 was the standard back then, and was a really good bike. My particular one was a Remedy 5, so it was the low end of the Remedies. At the time that I bought it, it was under $2,000, and it served me real well. It's gotten old, and some of the components have worn out, and with the advances in suspension and whatnot, I thought, well, now's the time to buy a bike since I'm back in it, in biking, most days of the week now. So I finally did it. Saved up enough, and I finally got it. So this is going to be my new bike. This is the Trek Fuel EX. This is the EX7. The low-end model is the EX, and I've talked to a couple people and test rode an EX and decided to go a little go one up on the EX, from the EX5 rather to the EX7. That's what I have here. So I'll just give you a quick rundown or brief overview of the bike. So this is a what we call a 29er. It has 29-inch rims as opposed to 26. And so far so good on those. I've never ridden a 29er. What I have noticed is it's slow to accelerate. That is, to get to speed takes a little longer than the 26er, but it's very steady, it's very stable, and it is very, very nice when it comes to turning. I can actually turn. It's a slower turn, and it doesn't have that kind of hyper responsiveness that I'm used to on my 26er. So it's just a little slower to turn. It seems to be a bit more stable, but it does take a little more time to get to speed. But once you do get to speed, it does maintain its momentum very well. The front fork is 120 millimeter travel. This is the Fox. Excuse me. The Fox Evolution series. This is the 30 distinctions are the 32s. So it's pretty. It's pretty stiff for what it is, a lower travel fork. It does have a through axle. This is the first time I've used a through axle. I've noticed it's very stiff, not really any wobbling, very stable when I've taken turns. Has the Shimano front and rear disc brakes. I believe it's a 180 millimeter disc up front, 160 millimeter disc in the back. It's pretty standard. And this particular fork has the three-way option here, the CTD, what they call it. See if I can focus in on that. Where when you put it into climb, it has very stiff, and it's a pseudo lockout kind of experience. And then you can put it into trail, which is kind of a happy medium between stiffness and when that valve opens up. And then you go to descend, and that is the plushest setting where it opens up very easily, feels very plush. I really don't notice myself using descend. Typically, I'll either put it in trail, on climb rather. I usually just put it in trail or descend. And I haven't really made up my mind which one I like better. I think I like descend better, just to keep it on descend. I've noticed that compared to the Manitou Minute on my Remedy, this has a much stiffer feel to it. Now, some of that is because I'm wearing a pack today. I think I overestimated my weight and put it about 200 pounds, and And I think what happened is I put a little bit more pressure than I think I might want in the fork, and so it just feels overall a bit stiffer. But it does feel a bit stiffer compared to the rear suspension. I'll talk about the rear suspension. It has a Shimano Deore front and rear derailleurs. Let's see here. It has the Duster Elite TLR rims. These are tubeless. They don't come tubeless, but you can convert them to tubeless pretty easily. Tires as well. The Bontrager tires, I think these are the XR3 29 by 2.3. Seem to do a really good job. What I noticed is that this is consistently a slow but a good climber. I get an immense amount of traction. I'm getting ample amounts of traction with this particular setup, and it may simply be due to the fact that the 29-inch wheels contact more of the dirt, and I really feel it when I'm coming up kind of slick, steep slopes. That rear tire just sinks in and grabs, and I can just really pedal real well with it. Okay. I'm kind of a tall guy. I'm 6'1", so this is a 19.5-inch frame. I believe that the Trek does this weird sizing where they do a virtual and actual. So the virtual size is 19.5. I think the actual is 18.5. Works real well with me. Really like the geometry of this. The steering is a lot slower and a lot more measured than my Remedy, but I actually like that I feel like I have more control and I can do some more fine tuning, and that's been really nice with a lot of the switchbacks that I've been running into. The saddle, nothing special, kind of tough, kind of hard. I actually have a prostate friendly saddle that I'll be putting on this particular one. This is literally the first time I've ridden this bike today, and I've already put about 14 miles on it. Well, that's a little harsh. I ended up actually a couple of years ago, ended up getting a bad case of prostatitis from possibly biking too much. And it was very, very uncomfortable. So I've been using a prostate-friendly seat just in case. The rear suspension, oh my goodness. Let's talk about the rear suspension. So this is pretty standard Trek fuel rear suspension from what I understand. This particular bike, the EX5, uses a RockShox rear suspension and a RockShox fork. And I'll be honest, the fork, when I test rode the 5, just felt terrible. That RockShox front fork felt terrible. This feels a lot better, but I've yet to make my mind up on how the Fox fork feels. I've yet to really make my mind up. I'm going to play with the pressure, and I don't want to say anything definitive yet. But boy, oh boy. So I set this up for about 195 to 200 pound person. This has what's called the DRCV. This is a proprietary technology that Trek has designed, the dual rate control valve. And basically what happens is there are actually 2 chambers. There's your main chamber, and then this little secondary chamber that can contain air. And then, of course, this is air sprung as well as this being air sprung. And what happens is, for about the first 50% of your travel, this plunger kind of uses this main canister, okay, container of air for lack of better words. And then what happens is at about 50% travel, there's a little valve in here that opens up and allows this top air chamber to communicate with the bottom air chamber. And what that does is, normally, and I've really noticed this on my Remedy uses the Manitou Swinger 3-way with a stable platform valve. And it's pretty good suspension for, being 2006, but what I've really noticed about this is this has a very linear feel. And normally what would happen is, as you use up your travel, as this gets closer to the top, the air in that chamber gets compressed, and it feels more and more and tighter and tighter and tighter and harder and harder and harsher. This is the feel of suspension feels harsher. But what happens with this is, once you hit that 50%, or right around 50% threshold, the valve opens up and this second chamber kicks in, and instead of feeling it kind of tighten up, it feels about the same all the way through its travel, more or less. It does feel a little tighten up when you hit those big bumps, but it feels remarkably linear. And I have to say, I really like it. It feels much harsher, though, than what I'm accustomed to on my Remedy. My Remedy kind of has this real sloppy travel, and that may be just simply due to the fact that I have 150 millimeters. I have over 5 inches of travel on the Remedy, whereas I have under 5 inches on this. So this is very much a cross-country trail kind of bike versus my Remedy, which is perhaps has a little more aggressive in terms of its suspension, but I certainly actually like the geometry of the fuel much better. I feel like I can be more aggressive. But I only have 120 millimeters of travel, which is about 4.7 inches. Some people say that they feel like it has more than 120 millimeters of travel. Coming off a 150 millimeter travel bike, I don't know that I totally agree with that. I will say that all 120 millimeters of travel feels marvelous on this bike, to be sure. So what other goodies do I have? Well, this also has the seat, the climb, the trail, and the downhill option. I don't find that I use the climb option all that much at all. Again, it's kind of a pain. I don't have a lockout lever mounted on my bike, and that may be something that I'll do. Who knows? So it's kind of a pain to kind of reach down, and I don't know the trails in this area as well. So sometimes, you know, when I hit rough terrain or real high terrain, steep climbs, I don't know about it, and I just climb through it and I'm done with it. So I mainly find myself either keeping this in trail, or I really like the downhill feel of this even when I'm doing climbs. Now I find if I do a long climb, I'll just put it into trail, and I think I'm happy more or less having it in trail, but I do like how plush it feels in the descent even when I'm not really descending. So that's where I'm at. Now this suspension also has kind of a different way of mounting certainly compared to my Remedy. A lot of bikes, what'll happen is look at the little butterfly there. The suspension will be mounted, the bottom part of the suspension will be mounted to the frame. It'll be immobile. And what they've done is that the shock has 2 different ways of communicating with the rear triangle here. It has a pivot here, and then it connects here, and you can see that this is mobile. And so this shock can actually, what they call, float. And that really makes for a responsive rear end. It feels very responsive, and when I hit little bumps, it responds, and now when I hit big bumps, it responds, and it tends not to get too clogged up in travel with little successive hits. It feels really nice. And again, but it's not a very loose, sloppy feel that like I'm used to. It's a very tight, very measured, very strategic feeling suspension. Let's look at the rear here. This also is through axle, Shimano hydraulic brake here as well. Has a SRAM crank, and I believe a SRAM bottom bracket. I'm not quite sure on that. It does have the Evo one-piece link, which I think is a magnesium, so it's really light. Seems to work just fine for me. The rear has this patented APB active, what do they call it? Basically what it does is it's a active braking pivot, I think is what they call it, the ABP rather, active braking pivot. And this actually is very effective. And what it does is the pivots here, and the way that the pivot's set up is when you brake, you still have suspension, and maybe some of that's due to the pivoting back here, and I can't help but think that perhaps some of it's due to the floating shock as well. But in any event, particularly when I'm going downhill and I'm pulling on my brake, I still notice the suspension working quite well. So the active braking pivot works exceptionally well. Big thumbs up there. A surprise on this bike, I wasn't expecting this, but this has a 2x10, I believe, or 2x11 instead of the 3, and I just love having that. I never used the big sprocket on my Remedy, really, And if anything, that bigger sprocket would hit stuff when I was going over rocks. And so I just love just having these two. Feels really tight. The front derailleur is a SRAM X5. The rear derailleur is a Shimano SLX, and this does have the clutch as well. Some other neat things that the Trek has done, they have this fiber here, this little built-in chain guard, which is really nice. And because of this clutch here, I'm not noticing any chain slap, and it has this little soft rubbery thing that the chain can hit, so it's so quiet. And then it also has some protection right here as well. I really like that. And then the last thing, just from an aesthetic standpoint, the color is beautiful. This is this liquid orange, I believe is what I call it. And see if I can get a little closer here and see. Look at that, just a beautiful, beautiful kind of liquid rusty orange color. When I finally had enough money to order this thing, they couldn't find them anywhere in the country, and then just so happens that they just had one that they put back into stock in Wisconsin, and they were just barely able to get it to me. So I don't know that they're not even selling these anymore, so you can't get this particular bottle. Maybe the 27.5 model. Even then, I don't think you can. So I may have gotten one of the very last of this for the 2015 model in stock. So my initial impression, I've been riding it for about 2 hours now, just a little under 2 hours, so I don't have a whole lot of time. My initial impression is I love the geometry, I love the way it feels, I love the way it looks aesthetically. It does tend to climb a little slower and take a little more time to get rolling. I love the amount of traction that I have, and just how steady and consistent it performs. And I'm ambivalent on the front fork. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to play around with the pressure, and we'll see if I can get it feeling a bit more plush. Certainly like the rear suspension. All in all, really nice. I think I chose wisely. I could have gone with a Remedy, but I'm just not a super aggressive rider, and I don't live in the Pacific Northwest where I have lots of huge roots and big drops. So this bike seems to be a nice compromise so far. So yeah, that's my take on this particular bike. I really like it so far. So time for me to get back on the trail. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for hanging in there.